Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a skill that can literally make or break any project you work on, whether it's a group assignment for a class or a huge business launch down the road, mastering risk management.
Okay, so let's dive right in. We're going to journey through the 5 essential stages of managing project risk. We'll kick things off by figuring out what risk even is. Then we'll move into planning, finding, analyzing, and finally, actually acting on those risks. Think of this as our game plan for the next few minutes.
So first up, let's get the fundamentals down. Why should you, as a student and a future professional, even care about this stuff? Why is it so important to get right? I'm sure you've heard this story before, or maybe you even lived through it. You know, everything on a project seems to be going just fine. You're hitting your deadlines, and then, bam, some totally unexpected problem pops up out of nowhere, throwing your entire schedule, and maybe even your grade, into complete chaos.
And you know what? The data totally backs this up. Good risk management isn't just about putting out fires. A huge 80% of teams say it helps them see problems coming before they happen. 60% say it flat out prevents surprises, and almost half say they have fewer delays. This just goes to show that planning for risk actually makes the unpredictable, well, a little more predictable.
So here is a really, really key idea you've got to grasp. Risk is not just about bad things happening. The official definition is an uncertainty that can have a negative or a positive effect on your project. We're all wired to focus on the threats, but that uncertainty can also open up some really great opportunities.
Let's break that down, because it's like two sides of the same coin. On one side, you have negative risks, which we just call threats. These are the potential headaches, like a key team member getting sick right before presentation, that we want to minimize. But on the other side, you've got positive risks or opportunities. Maybe a brand new piece of software gets released that could cut your research time in half. These are the good surprises you want to maximize.
Now, let's get a little personal for a second. Think about your own personality. How do you really feel about risk? This matters, whether you're working on a semester-long project or launching a company someday. The concept is called risk utility, and it's basically the amount of satisfaction you get from a potential win, or, put simply, your personal comfort level with taking a gamble.
And generally, people fall into one of 3 buckets. On the left, you've got the risk-averse person. They'd much rather take a smaller, guaranteed payoff than risk it for a bigger one. In the middle, you have the risk-neutral person, who's pretty balanced. And on the right, you've got the risk seeker, the person who loves those high-risk, high-reward scenarios. So, which one sounds the most like you?
All right, so with those basics in mind, how do we actually build a real framework to start managing all of this uncertainty?
The very first step is to create something called a risk management plan. Just think of it as the official rulebook for how your team is going to handle risk. It's a formal document and it lays out everything: the methods you're going to use, who's in charge of what, the budget and time you're setting aside, and even how you're going to define and measure risk.
And any good plan has backups, right? You need a plan B and sometimes even a plan C. Contingency plans are your pre-planned actions for if a risk actually happens. And for those really big, high-impact risks, you might have a fallback plan. That's your plan C for if your first response doesn't work out. It is all about being prepared. Now here's a super useful tool for organizing all of this: a risk breakdown structure, or RBS. It's kind of like a family tree for all your potential risks. So instead of just a long, messy list of worries, you get to neatly categorize them into areas like business risks, technical risks, and so on. It really helps you structure your thinking so you don't miss anything. So once you have that framework built, it's time to roll up our sleeves and actually start finding the specific risks that could impact your project. And project managers have a whole bag of tricks for this. You can do a classic team brainstorming session. You could use something called the Delphi technique, which is a neat way to get an honest consensus from experts without them influencing each other. You can, of course, just go out and interview people. Or you can do a SWOT analysis, looking at your project's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
The main thing that comes out of all this work is a super important document called a risk register. You will absolutely create these in your classes and in your future career. It's basically the master logbook that tracks every single potential risk, all its details, and, this is key, it assigns an owner who's responsible for keeping an eye on it. Okay, so now you've got this long list of potential risks. You can't tackle all of them at once, it's just impossible. So how do you prioritize? You use this: a probability/impact matrix. You plot each risk based on how likely it is to happen and how big of an impact it would have if it did. Your attention should go straight to that top right corner, the high probability, high impact stuff. Those are the big ones you need to plan for first.
For those really high priority risks, that quick gut check isn't always enough. You need to dig deeper. You need to actually analyze their potential effects with numbers.
A really powerful tool for doing this is called a decision tree. It helps you calculate something called the expected monetary value, or EMV, so you can make a choice based on data, not just a gut feeling. You map out your options and multiply the probability of each outcome by its financial value. So in this example, you can see if you run the numbers, Project 1 has an EMV of $28,000. But Project 2, that comes out just a little bit higher, at $30,000, making it the slightly better financial bet.
Okay, last stage. After all of that identifying and analyzing, what do you actually do about all these risks? Well, you've got different moves depending on whether you're facing a threat or an opportunity. For threats, you can try to avoid the risk, transfer it to someone else, like buying insurance, mitigate it to make it less painful, or just plain accept it. And for opportunities, you can try to exploit it to make sure it happens, share it with a partner, enhance its probability, or, again, just accept the good fortune.
And this is so important to remember. Risk management is not a one-and-done thing you just check off a list. It's a continuous cycle. You have to be constantly tracking your risks, looking out for new ones, and checking to see if your plans are actually working, all the way through the project. And that really leads to a final crucial point. Good risk management often goes completely unnoticed. Why? Because its whole purpose is to stop disasters from ever happening in the first place. It's the secret ingredient that makes a really complex project look completely effortless from the outside. So now that you've got the toolkit, let's bring it all back to you. Think about your own work, maybe that big class project you've got coming up. What's the biggest unmanaged risk staring you in the face right now? What uncertainty could you start planning for today?